It was only a couple of weeks ago that there was supposed to be this huge ICE raid to deport 2,000 illegal immigrants, but Trump called it off. He said that he wanted to give Democrats and Republicans a chance to come up with a plan, a way to actually deal with the problem of illegal immigration. While others have said it was because details of the operation were leaked, compromising security. In fact, there were many Democrats issuing warnings, a lot of activist organizations issuing warnings. Many people were wondering how these organizations got the information on the operations. In fact, some journalists apparently were spreading information about where to go for the planned raid. So I'm pretty sure the information got leaked. But here's the latest update. ICE ready to apprehend and deport 1 million illegal immigrants. So this is the breaking news as of today, that the acting director of USCIS, Citizen and Immigration Services, said the government is ready to identify, detain, and deport the illegal immigrants who have ignored court orders to leave the country. Now, I want to go through all this news, but I want to talk about a few other issues as well. There's a problem we're seeing in the 2020 race that Democrats seem to be going too far to the left. The reason it's a problem is that they're now kind of campaigning for non-citizens. While many people on the left and many Democrats would deny this, you actually had Beto O'Rourke doing a campaign event in Mexico. You had Cory Booker actually accompanying illegal immigrants back into the country. And on the debate stage, they all raised their hand for providing illegal immigrants with universal health care, with government health care. So it definitely seems like Democrats are playing into this game. But here's where it gets interesting in relation to this story. We're at a time now where different states are going to be granting driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. New York and Oregon, for example, that I have pulled up. We're now learning that the FBI and ICE are using state driver's license photos without consent for facial recognition searches, meaning if these illegal immigrants actually go to get their driver's licenses, ICE is going to use those photos for facial recognition to potentially track them down. And this ties back into the main story of how they will identify, detain, and deport 1 million illegal immigrants. Now, here's the thing. 1 million, it's a bit hyperbolic. My understanding is it's going to be similar to the previous announcement that they're targeting a few thousand people. But what they're saying is there are 1 million people who are on court orders to leave and have not done so. So here's what we'll do. We'll start with this story and we'll move through it and talk about some issues, how this pertains to politics, and how I think this ties into the story about the Democrats not actually caring about what they're campaigning for. Bernie Sanders said not too long ago that we can't have open borders because there are too many poor people who would want to come here, but then on the debate stage says he would provide illegal immigrants with health care. You can't incentivize them to come here and then claim you're opposed to it. So I've got some stories lined up, but we'll start with this. Now, before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There is a PayPal option, a crypto option, and a physical address. Now, forgive me for plugging this, but I'll tell you something. I have done many videos, talking about what's going on with illegal immigration, and YouTube has actually said it is biased against a protected class, demonetized. Seriously. Which means simply talking about this can result in demonetization or actual penalties on my channel. So I'll say this. Recently, we learned that my channel and many others are no longer getting suggested by YouTube. So if you like the content, please share it. But let's talk about the news now. We have a quote here. It says, "They're ready to just perform their mission, which is to go and find and detain and then deport the approximately 1 million people who have final removal orders," Ken Cuccinelli said Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation. Cuccinelli was referring to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, an agency with the Department of Homeland Security that's tasked with locating and deporting aliens living in the U.S. I think we know what ICE is. Who among those will be targeted for this particular effort or not is really just information kept within ICE at this point, the acting director explained. Cuccinelli's comments come after President Donald Trump announced and then later scrapped plans in June to conduct sweeping ICE raids across the country. The raids would have targeted major U.S. cities and roughly 2,000 undocumented immigrants who are disobeying deportation orders. Trump at the time said the raids were postponed in order to work with Democrats on a solution to the immigration crisis, but other accusations make it unclear why exactly the raids were called off. The president now appears ready to move forward with the mass deportation plan. And we have another quote. This is from Trump. "These are people where we have their papers. We've gone through the court system. They'll be starting fairly soon, but I don't call them raids. We're removing people that have come All of these people over the years that have come in illegally, we are removing them and bringing them back to their country, Trump said to reporters on Friday. When host Margaret Brennan asked if Cuccinelli's statements mean ICE would be targeting a far larger number of illegal aliens than just a few thousand, the USCIS chief hedged, pointing out that he was just referring to the pool of people given final removal orders. I think it would be silly to assume ICE has the capacity to actually deport 1 million people in a short amount of time. But he is saying there is this large group of people, and he did say that they're actually ready to deport to identify and deport the approximately 1 million people who have those removal orders. So it may just be, hyperbole. The mission will likely just be a few thousand, but let's read on. Cuccinelli, who was tapped by Trump to lead USCIS in June, pointed out the irony in how much controversy ICE has garnered over reports that it's conducting one of its main duties. It's important to note, here we are talking about ICE doing its job as if it's special, and really this should be going on a rolling basis for ICE, and they've been interfered with effectively and held up by the politics of Washington to a certain extent, and they're looking forward to just getting back to doing their job. The USCIS chief called on Congress to change asylum and human trafficking laws and to put a fix on the Flores settlement to help stem the immigration crisis on the U.S.-Mexico border. I will add, too, as an aside, we recently saw CNN's Fareed Zakaria come out and say Trump is right about asylum laws, that people are gaming the system. Now, there's an interesting political issue happening right now with the census and the citizenship question. The Supreme Court recently said Trump could not add a question to the census that asked whether or not people were citizens. Many people on the left and activists said this would deter, it would be an incentive, it would scare immigrants. They wouldn't want to fill out the forms out of a fear of reprisal, of maybe being deported or something. I don't believe that's actually a legitimate argument. Now, my opinion, I don't believe so. If someone is living here legally, then they'll fill out the form and say they're not a citizen. If someone is citizen, they say they will. Now, people have wondered, why would Trump want this question on the census? My understanding is it used to be on the census. Obama may have removed it. At least that's what many people are saying. Not sure. I haven't dug too far into that. But it would allow, for one, federal funding appropriations from the federal government, as well as districting for Congress and otherwise. And we're seeing this tweet go viral here. Alison Frankel is a legal columnist from Reuters who said, Trump just said in impromptu news conference that he needs citizenship data for congressional districting. So now we know. This is effort to deny political representation to non-citizens. This needs some clarification. There are a lot of people on the right who are saying something as simple as this. Non-citizens don't have any say in what happens here. Another reason to re-elect Trump. This person said non-citizens aren't supposed to be represented. A third, non-citizens do not deserve, nor does the Constitution mandate political representation. If they become citizens, they can. They can answer the question, which will help the apportioning funding for the infrastructure. Okay, we get it. People are all saying non-citizens should not be represented. That's technically not true, okay? It's mostly true, but there is nuance within these arguments. People who are here, illegally or not, still have constitutional protections. They break the law, they can be deported. There still has to be some kind of representation in a sense to how we deal with these people and their human rights. So this is my understanding. I could be wrong, but my understanding is that you still have constitutional rights even if you're an illegal immigrant. Therefore, it will require politicians in their area with those people living there to discuss how to deal with the problem. So it's different, okay? I want to make sure that's clear. I understand what they're saying. When it comes to what laws are passed, it should fall to citizens to decide how they determine whether or not people enter or are removed from the country. But it is still an issue of people who are here have human rights. Human rights exist. We have to uphold those rights, even if the people, are criminals. Criminals have human rights too, plain and simple. Even bad criminals. So I think we can tone this one down a little bit. But I do think it's kind of telling to what we're seeing in the mainstream left about this idea that whatever this woman's intention was, I think there are a lot of Democrats who really do believe that, illegal immigrants should have government paid health care, should have government benefits, should not be deported. They're actively open borders. right? We saw them on the debate stage putting up their hands saying decriminalize illegal immigration. I kid you not. It was Castro who said he wants to decriminalize illegal border crossings. Well, then what do you do, right? He says you shouldn't arrest these people. Even Joe Biden said these people who enter the country illegally but don't break any laws should not be the focus of our deportation. Well, that's literally what we do. I mean, unless the implication is that there are way more people who are criminals. Like, is Joe Biden implying that the illegal immigrants are mostly criminals and the ones who aren't should stay? No, it's silly. There's very basic reasons why we have immigration laws. Security screenings, stopping trafficking, protecting children, but also just making sure the economy can sustain massive growth. If we had 144,000 in May, the number has gone down. But as I've said over and over again, I think you get it. You can't just flood a city with a large number of people because the economy won't support it. In one of the videos I did a few days ago, we have a woman in Maine who is about to be evicted from her apartment, so the government gives her a tent and tells her, go ahead, sleep outside. Meanwhile, they have facilities for migrants from Africa. Listen, I absolutely want to make sure we can accommodate those who come here and are seeking asylum, whether it be from Africa or any other nation. I think it's important to point out, if you're in Africa, you could probably stay in Brazil. That's what they're doing. They're flying to Brazil. But it does become extremely problematic when you have homeless people in our own country that aren't being taken care of. This woman who's being evicted presumably paid taxes for a long time and is now being told she can sleep outside. This is a problem. These are problems that need to be dealt with. So here's what I want to do. Let's not get into too much of the politicking necessarily, but I want to address this story next as well. That, look, the lead is all we really need here, the headline. ICE is using driver's license photos and the FBI without consent. I believe this is wrong, full stop. A lot of people are posting jokes saying it's funny, haha, give the illegal immigrants their driver's licenses and then ICE can find them. This is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. I could be wrong, but we have a right to be free from illegal search and seizure. The government should not be going into databases for, identification databases for facial recognition without warrants. And it's already getting pretty dystopian as it is. We need IDs for various functions. It makes sense, okay? You can argue about how some things shouldn't have IDs, some things should. You've got the Democrats right now saying no voter ID, Republicans saying voter ID. Okay, let's stop right now. If you are required to have an ID to vote, then you should not allow law enforcement agencies to go into those databases that were designed for other reasons for law enforcement purposes. Okay, you should be able to be free from that search. If my expectation is my ID is good for driving and it's good for casting a vote, it should not be, giving the government the right or ability to actually do a search and to do facial recognition against me. I think we need to have these clear dividing lines. And I need to make sure we hold these institutions accountable and make sure there are warrants whenever there is a search. It's complicated. I'm not an expert. But as I've shown you, we have these stories about various states granting driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. Now, as I mentioned early on, the point is a lot of people on the right are laughing, saying, aha, if they take their license now, they'll be caught by ICE. Well, it's true. So perhaps that will be a deterrent to a certain extent for illegal immigrants to get licenses. I don't agree with law enforcement agencies just going into our databases and looking up our photos. But I will also point out there have been some actually interesting arguments in favor of why they should have driver's licenses. To track them, plain and simple. Right now, ICE has to actively identify and figure out where these illegal immigrants are. So you've got a lot of people on the right who have been very critical of granting driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. But then there's actually the argument, once again, from the right that if these people get a license, for one, if they get pulled over, you will know who they are and what they're doing. But more importantly, if they defy, certain orders, like deportation orders, they'll have known addresses for them. And if they get pulled over, they might be able to find out where these people are. So it's essentially acting as a kind of tracking. Again, it falls into a complicated space where I don't like the idea of the government issuing one thing in exchange for another. That's just an argument I've heard. Another argument is that people who have licenses are less likely to flee the scene of an accident. But in the end, I think one of the big challenges, I believe this will probably end up being a net negative for everybody, and it probably is a bad idea because it's going. Look, I'm not going to argue in favor of the government doing the cross-agency warrantless searching, and I don't think it's a good idea to give illegal immigrants driver's licenses because we have the next story I want to get into, and I think I might have yes, right here. This is where it starts to get really complicated. Loophole in law granting illegal immigrants driver's licenses could lead to voter fraud. There was an instance where a woman in Texas was a permanent resident with a green card, and she voted, and she didn't know she couldn't do it, and I think she got prison time for it. It was an older lady, and I think this is abhorrent. Absolutely not. Purge the vote, deal with the problem, but don't put a little old lady in prison because she didn't realize she wasn't supposed to vote. I get it. If you're not a citizen, you don't vote. But she was if someone just makes a simple mistake, a nonviolent crime, it was a mistake, then rectify the problem, tell them not to do it again. I believe pencils have erasers for a reason. And we should definitely be lenient, but a lot of people are concerned this will be a serious problem, and thus they want to set an example. It's true. What happens is when people sign up for a driver's license, sometimes they're automatically registered to vote. This could result in actual people being registered. Let's read this. They say a loophole in the new law granting driver's licenses to illegal immigrants could allow hundreds of thousands of people to fraudulently register to vote in New York, according to critics, the State Board of Elections, and the bill's own sponsor. A major concern is that many states, including New York, use their DMVs to enroll voters. Since New York does not have voter identification laws like the majority of other states do, this bill increases the potential for voter fraud. This means that New York will soon have the most radical, open-ended law in the entire nation. The Green Light Bill, which passed the Senate 33-29 Monday and was signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo, allows illegal immigrants to obtain standard state driver's licenses that can be used for identification and to board domestic flights. But it is also the sole document required to register to vote. So here's the thing, right? This is a story from last month, but check this out. A story from February. NPR. NPR is not right-wing. NPR is not centrist. NPR is left-leaning. And they said, some non-citizens do wind up registered to vote, but usually not on purpose. Okay, full stop. We can look to their concerns and say it could lead to voter fraud, and then we can see that even NPR says, yeah, it's not on purpose, but it happens. Okay, let's say this. Non-citizens voting will happen. It has happened. And even NPR is saying it's not on purpose. Let's operate from the perspective of the left and NPR. It's not on purpose. You're right. It's still a problem. It is. We can't have non-citizens voting, right? There have been certain jurisdictions, local jurisdictions, that have actually tried passing bills that would allow undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants, the right to vote in certain local jurisdiction elections. I believe this is a terrible mistake. Plain and simple. When you bring people in and then tell them they have a right to vote, they will vote to bring in more people. The problem with this is nothing racial, nothing based on country. I believe legal immigration is great. Bring everybody. Everybody bring your families legally, emigrate to the United States. It's a great place. I recommend it. But there's a reason for a legal process. When you give people who are not citizens the right to vote, or when they fraudulently vote, they vote to provide the resources of your community to other communities that aren't contributing to the pot. Plain and simple. Okay? Look, if the whole world was paying taxes to like one global fund that evenly distributed it, and then you wanted to have people from Mexico come to the United States. Well, if everyone was paying into it, it makes sense. There's a long way to go before we get to a global society and international funds and all that stuff. Sure, I'm making a point. The point is, if people from Mexico are not paying in to the taxes of the United States, then come into the U.S. and vote, they're likely going to vote in a way that will provide benefits to people who aren't putting back into the system. That is a net loss for the country. Taxes are already like people paying. I look at it this way. When it comes to taxes, you're paying a subscription fee to the U.S., essentially. It's percentage based to reap the benefits of this wonderful country. The Constitution is worth every penny, plain and simple. Now, I think it's fair to point out a lot of taxes go to stupid places, and I would prefer not to give my tax dollars to war. But it's also a community where people vote and choose, and we've come to this point. And look, I'm not one of these anti-tax libertarian types. I think taxes, for the most part, are a good thing. I do believe we need periodic reform and we need some serious overhaul. But we're paying into a system that, in a sense, funds the country, builds the roads, sets the building up, provides for the common defense. If someone is going to come here from somewhere else and they're not paying into that subscription, why should they reap the benefits? I look at it kind of like you sign up for Netflix and you give out your password, and then someone starts giving out the password to other people, and all of a sudden your Netflix is all screwed up, and you can't even watch movies anymore, and you're like, dude, look, I gave the password to one person, right? But that one person has friends too, and now they have the access, and they're going to share it. It's important to make sure citizens vote, non-citizens don't. So it sounds like across the board, giving licenses to illegal immigrants is kind of just a bad deal for everybody. Again, FBI and ICE are abusing the driver's license database to actually use facial recognition and track people down. Not a good thing for the illegal immigrants. If you're someone on the far left who thinks they should have a right to be here, great. Well, ICE is using that. It's not a good idea for them to get it. So in the long run, one last thing I want to point out as we talk about, illegal immigration, just to highlight the big main story of the video to make sure it's, fresh. ICE is ready to deport 1 million illegal immigrants. But I want to highlight this story right here, just really quickly. I'm not going to read it. I might read it later. The Democrats aren't a left-wing party. They just play one on TV. And I believe that's true, for the most part. Look at what Bernie Sanders says about illegal immigrants, and then look at what he says on the debate stage. At a rally, he says, there's too many poor people, they can't come here. Man, there'd be too many. And then when he goes on the debate stage, what does he actually say? Healthcare for illegal immigrants. We shouldn't. Basically, everybody. I don't want to put this specifically on Bernie because I'm not sure of his record. But you had a bunch of the people on the stage saying healthcare, no deportation, and decriminalization of illegal immigration. Does he really believe that? Well, just a month or so ago, he said no. So no, I think they are just playing them on TV. I don't think they actually believe half of what they say, and that's why I think this is also disconcerting. We've got Democrats actively campaigning in Mexico. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Beto O'Rourke literally went to Mexico and Cory Booker brought in illegal immigrants. And yes, while many people will say they're asylum seekers, no. The women with Cory Booker had previously been deported under the migrant protection protocols. They were awaiting their court case and they were actively trying to bypass the law, and Cory Booker brought them in. So look, the Democrats are pandering. They're pretending to care about issues that are actually bad for the whole of the country and even bad for the migrants. So please, we need sound policy. Instead, what do we get? Ocasio-Cortez fights with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi then, drags Ocasio-Cortez and the far left Democrats, saying you got 4 votes. Doesn't matter how many followers you have. They're not. Okay, I'm going to go off on a rant, so we'll wrap this up. Basically, Ocasio-Cortez and the other far left won't even fund the border bill, which provides $3 billion in humanitarian aid. It's posturing. They don't care about solutions. They're pretending to be far left, and meanwhile, we have serious problems. So the important final takeaway is that the raid we're talking about, the 1 million migrants, 1 million illegal immigrants, it's probably going to be a few thousand. But Trump was going to do this before, and apparently many people said that the information was leaked. They were accusing leaking critical details before the plan was executed. I received some information from sources about some speculation based on leaked information. So I believe, yes, information was leaked. So look, who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll see if the raid takes place. I think we will start seeing an uptick in ICE activity, and we're gonna see the Democrats using this because the position has basically been orange man bad. And I'm not trying to be a dick. I know it's a silly thing to say, but look, the Democrats really have just opposed everything Trump does for whatever reason. Americans are concerned about immigration. They don't think Trump's doing a good enough job, but the Democrats are obstructing. We have a humanitarian crisis because the Democrats wouldn't foot the bill. They didn't want to sign on. Well, they finally did, but Ocasio-Cortez won't, so please. We have serious problems with immigration. I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that we're gonna see action taken, and it's going to be used against Trump. We'll see where it takes us. I'll leave it there. Stick around. More segments to come starting at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews. The podcast will be every day at 6:30 p.m. unless, of course, for some reason it didn't publish properly, which is what happened last night. But anyway, thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all in the next segment, again, at youtube.com/TimCastNews.